Good day, everyone. For teleSUR, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. In a move designed to stomp out corruption, the Brazilian government is putting together a new board of directors for the state-owned oil giant Petrobras. President Dilma Rousseff has 24 hours to come up with the names of those who will head the company. The president will have to choose whether to appoint someone from the private sector or from the public sector. Petrobras shares dropped after the corruption scandal, which has led to the arrest of 3 executives and 40 employees. Many in Brazil believe that outside interests are attempting to take advantage of the Petrobras situation to further their own aims in South America's largest country.
Now, because of an administrative crisis, there's an effort by the large international oil interests, the multinational corporations, and the United States to destabilize Petrobras.
These are attempts to take from Brazil the control of their oil.
Social movements and organizations in Mexico are calling for a new constituent assembly. Now the call comes as parents of the 43 disappeared students from Ayotzinapa return from the UN in Geneva. The social movements say widespread impunity and corruption among Mexico's governing class is creating a social crisis. As a result, they argue it's necessary to refound the Mexican state. Since Enrique Peña Nieto became president 2 years ago, over 1,500 people have been reported missing. The decapitated body of popular Revolutionary Front leader Alejandro Salgado has been found in the Mexican state of Morelos, that's just south of the capital. Salgado had been a prominent organizer of protests over the missing 43 Ayotzinapa students. A day before his body was found, his organization accused local state officials of being responsible for his then disappearance. Apart from the violence and disappearances, Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto is in the spotlight for alleged corruption. Peña Nieto's wife and the Mexican finance minister have been involved in a scandal regarding the acquisition of houses from government contractors, the Higa Group and the San Roman Group. Peña Nieto has himself assigned a government body to investigate whether or not the incident constitutes a conflict of interest. For more now, we go to our correspondent, Clayton Kahn.
The new minister tapped by Mexico's president Enrique Peña Nieto to launch a probe into home purchases that Nieto, his wife, as well as the finance minister made from government contractors, said that the investigation would most likely take months. Rogelio Andrade, named by Nieto to be the head of the Ministry of the Public Service on Tuesday, said the investigation will be made up of a panel of experts to determine whether there's a conflict of interest between the luxury home purchases made on favorable terms by companies that will go on to win big public works contracts. However, critics are calling the new commission weak and lacking any legal binding. There's also growing criticism of the relationship that Andrade has had with Nieto's political party, the Institutional Revolutionary Party, or PRI, as well as the close ties he has had with the finance minister, Luis Videgaray. It has been reported that Andrade, who was supposed to lead the impartial investigation, was a high school and college friend of Videgaray, and that has been an active militant of the PRI. In recent weeks, Nieto has come under heavy fire by the luxury home scandal, prompting many to examine whether corruption exists in his government and cabinet. This is Clayton Kahn reporting for teleSUR here in Mexico City.
And thanks to Clayton, South American foreign ministers are to discuss the situation in Venezuela next week at a UNISUR meeting in Quito. The Secretary General of UNISUR, Ernesto Samper, met Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in Caracas on Wednesday. Samper warns that any attempt to oust a democratically elected government would be met with unanimous rejection by the regional body. President Maduro says he has given Samper evidence of the United States' efforts against his government. Also in Venezuela, the government continues its efforts to tackle economic sabotage. State-owned Vinalcasa is boosting its production of sugar, grains, and powdered milk. The company's products reach 40% of the population, with 425 tons of food produced per day. The company has over 20 production plants throughout the country that are working full-time to stop shortages.
We are producing at maximum capacity. We have 4 lines of milk with 17 machines producing 24 packages a minute each.
Argentinian President Cristina Fernandez has signed 7 new agreements with China on the last day of her visit to Beijing. Fernandez met with the Prime Minister Li Qiang and the head of the Chinese parliament in her effort to boost commercial ties between the two countries. The new agreements include commitments to start work on 2 hydroelectric plants in southern Argentina. The president signed 15 other agreements earlier in the week. Meanwhile, in Argentina, discussions over the reform of the intelligence agency are underway in the Argentinian Senate, but without the attendance of the opposition. The law has been proposed in the wake of the controversial murder of prosecutor Alberto Nisman. teleSUR's Argentina correspondent Leopoldete Cadudi brings us more from Buenos Aires.
Under special sessions in Congress, human rights organisations and security experts exposed their opinions regarding the bill that seeks to reform the intelligence system.
There were doubts, there were concerns and suggestions, but all in the spirit and the guidance of improving the bill to produce a more comprehensive one based on some of the recommendations that we have offered.
Changes to the bill were requested by the speakers, also urging the opposition to reconsider its decision to drop out of the debate and to come forward to make changes that will enrich the project.
We have not found any attitude of being closed off or of voting behind closed doors, so we request that those who have not been present participate.
The bill received a favourable opinion in the Senate, chamber in which the bill will be debated next week. From Buenos Aires, Leopoldete Cadudi, teleSUR.
And thanks to Leo, in Peru, consumer advocates are becoming increasingly concerned about the health standards of products sold on the market. Our correspondent in Lima, Raul Mora, is covering it.
Peru has regulations mandating labeling of certain ingredients included in food that seem to have negative effects on the health of people, such as yellow 5 dye, trans fats, and genetically modified organisms. However, government agencies have not implemented the legislation, and many common products are sold without labeling. Consumer advocate Crisólogo Cáceres has been working on these issues for years.
It is as if the regulations have been set by businessmen, so that here what you consider safe in other countries is considered absolutely poisonous, and the Peruvian consumers are eating it. Therefore, in terms of food, there's a series of things to do, but unfortunately the authorities are not being proactive, and businessmen are only protecting their interests.
There are also issues with misleading advertisement. Products are presented as one thing, but Peruvians have to be extra careful to find out what is in them. Such is the case of industrial meat, which is presented as beef but might have horse meat, GM soy proteins, and large quantities of fat.
What we have to do is push for public policy that promotes several things. First, the consumption of healthy foods, natural foods, vegetables, fruits, non-processed or lightly processed foods. But there's also the power of an industry that invests hundreds of millions of dollars promoting junk food.
The presence of unhealthy foods in Peru is particularly alarming, since the country has a rich biodiversity with relatively affordable natural and unprocessed products and growing international recognition for its rich culinary tradition. Reporting from Lima, Peru for teleSUR, Rael Mora.
And thanks to Rael. Taking a look around the world now, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko has announced that he could declare nationwide martial law if clashes with rebel forces continue escalating. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is already in Kiev meeting with government authorities. The United States is considering providing Ukraine with weapons. Meanwhile, French President François Hollande and German Chancellor Angela Merkel will both visit Ukraine and then Russia with proposals to ease the escalating conflict.
It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you in Kiev again.
And as Western leaders gather in Kiev, NATO is stepping up its pressure on Russia. The military alliance announced it will more than double the size of its 13,000-men rapid response force, which will be deployed in Eastern Europe. The NATO defense ministers have announced that they will install 6 new military bases throughout Eastern Europe. That will mark the largest deployment of troops since the Cold War.
As I said,
in a move that puts more pressure on Greece to find solutions to its debt problem, the European Central Bank canceled its acceptance of Greek bonds in return for funding. The measure will force the Greek Central Bank to provide tens of billions of euros in additional emergency liquidity. The measure has led to a 1.3% drop in the euro's value. Oil prices continue on the up. Oil futures surged after the Chinese central bank decided to cut its reserve ratio requirements. The prices were also boosted by the announcement of a reduction in the number of oil rigs operating in the U.S. and the fall in the U.S. dollar, which has reached its lowest price in a year. Social movements in the United States are demanding a real shift in policy towards Cuba. Activists reacted after Congress organized a hearing to analyze the new relationship with the Caribbean island. The social movements claim issues like Guantanamo Bay and the ongoing blockade against Cuba are not being addressed, showing there is little interest in modifying conflicting issues between both nations. And also in the United States, a U.S. judge has given the Obama administration 1 week to explain why it is withholding over 2,000 torture photos from Iraq and Afghanistan. The American Civil Liberties Union has advocated for the release of the photos for more than a decade. Critics say that by withholding these photos, President Obama is going back on his promises of transparency and accountability, which he made in the early days of his administration. Palestinian cuisine has a long history of influences coming from Persian and Turkish dishes, as well as other Levantine cuisines, including Lebanese, Syrian, and many other places in the Middle East. Take a look.
Palestinian cuisine has a long history of influences coming from Persian and Turkish dishes, as well as other Levantine cuisines, including Lebanese, Syrian, and many other places in the Middle East. Here in the Gaza Strip, most of the meals are accompanied by saj, a bread also known as shrak or markook. This is a type of flat bread that is baked on a domed metal griddle.
There are many things in our culture that bring some comfort to our heart. Al-Saj bread is a taste of our great history, and it reminds us of the good days with our grandparents. It's easy to make, and it's delicious to eat.
Palestinians have handed down the recipe for saj from generation to generation because it is the easiest to make in times of hardships such as war, migration, or displacement, all circumstances Palestinians have suffered historically. Today, Palestinian families in the Gaza Strip use saj bread in many different ways. Some cook it with rice and yogurt to make a delicious mansaf dish. Others soak it in meat or chicken stock to create Palestinian fatta, or stuff it with chicken, onion, and sumac to make musakhan rolls.
Each day we sell hundreds of sak bread packages, and it can easily be cooked during times of war on the wood fire. As most of the times during conflicts, we rarely get electricity to generate the bread machines. Every day when I go back home, I have to bring back some for my family. They love it.
Many restaurants around the Gaza Strip have begun using saj bread in shawarma, shish tawuq, and kebab sandwiches to bring an old Palestinian traditional flavor to modern Mediterranean cuisine. Noor Harazin, teleSUR TV, Gaza.
Noor Harazin there reporting in Gaza. And in Uruguay to end today, the yearly celebration of Carnival is underway. Candombe bands are preparing for their performances. Some days will be dedicated to Afro rhythms and parades with African-inspired traditional dances. The South American country hosts the longest Carnival in the world, lasting from late January until March, and features dance, theatrical shows, parades, and live music all over the country. Good way to end today. Plenty more on those stories and others at our website. Check it out, telesurtv.net/English. For teleSUR English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great Thursday.